Hey everyone, I'm so happy that you could join us with the judge. So we have Fiona here with us all the way from Australia. So it's kind of fun to play in multiple time zones here. So Fiona, I want you to tell us a little bit about your experience as a judge, a little bit about, how you got into the dressage judging thing in the first place, and we'll go from there.
Terrific. Well, thank you very much indeed for inviting me to this session, and I really do hope that I am able to make a contribution to further insights that you want to have about dressage training and some of the things that dressage judges are really trying to focus on when they're evaluating your tests. As for me, I started riding. Well, you can't see the grey hairs, but they're there, a long, long time ago. And I went through the usual pony club, children's gymkhanas and stuff. And then when my two children started to ride, I decided that I would also become a part of their journey. And so I jumped back on a horse and thought, well, I actually really enjoy this dressage stuff that I'm seeing. So I would like to involve myself more in that. So I started my dressage journey, which is probably the best part of about 30 years ago now. And as time progressed, I realized that one of the fundamental things that was helping me understand better how to be a good rider was understanding from the judge's perspective, what were they really looking for? What was this thing called the training scale that everyone kept on talking about? And all of these movements, what was the purpose of it all? So in the fullness of time, I decided I would start my judge accreditation process. Now, it's a fairly arduous process, and certainly you have to listen to a lot of people tell you their words of wisdom, but more to the point, you had to watch a lot of horses in all sorts of shapes and sizes and breeds, and you needed to be able to be very confident about setting the benchmark for when you said, this is a 6 or that's an 8, that was very clearly defined in your mind. What did that mean? And how could you then communicate that to a rider, that the reason you were awarding a 6 was because of this? Because essentially all they had in front of them at the end of the day after they'd finished their test obviously was a piece of paper and a scribe who had furiously written as much as they could, but essentially it was only a snapshot in time. So as a rider, you had to be able to work out, what did the judge really mean? Anyway, so as time progressed, I obviously went up the ranks with, here in Australia, we call it the Equestrian Australia. That's our primary body. And I just progressed up the ranks. So now I am currently at C level. C level means that I am able to judge up to advanced, which is your 4th level. Now, why am I not higher? Well, because unfortunately, as the trials and tribulations of horses often happen, just as I was about to do my next level of riding, which would have been the Advanced Prix St George, unfortunately, my two horses succumbed to injuries in fairly rapid succession. And so I'm only now getting to the point where my other 2 young horses are coming up the ranks. And again, I hope to be out competing. I have to be able to ride at the level at which I'm judging. So sometime in the foreseeable future, I really do hope that I will be doing my B and then my A level. But it's a wait and see, because you never know what's around the corner. So that's what got me into, 1, riding again after my childhood exploits, and 2, specifically into dressage, and why I am constantly judging, but also trying to balance that with riding my own horses. Interesting to note, some of the tests that have been already submitted, I actually judged here in Australia only just last weekend. So it's a really nice reference point to say, hang on a minute, the things that I'm seeing here in America are some of the same issues that we're seeing here in Australia. So it doesn't seem to matter whether it's northern hemisphere or southern hemisphere. We still have a lot of the same good things and challenging things as riders that we have to address.
Yeah, I think that's the coolest thing about dressage is that sometimes you get into your small town bubble and you go to a horse show and you're like, oh, Amanda's just amazing and she comes in all the time and she's this fancy horse and I can never place. And then you go down to a different location and you're like, oh, well, there's always an Amanda, right? Like there's always going to be an Amanda and there's always going to be, other people. And like for me, the biggest thing was when I went to Florida last year. Like, I don't know if many of you know, but Wellington, Florida is like the heart and center of dressage in the winter. And I was fortunate enough to go last year and I watched so many tests at the level that I'm riding at and the level above. And I love, so that for me, that was third level at the time. So for me to watch third level tests and see so many horses get late changes or root or buck or, kind of stop in the middle of their test and that kind of thing. And then to watch fourth level riders as well and go, oh, well, yeah, there's an Amanda, but like we're all kind of on the same journey and we're all kind of
lots of other people out there too. And there's lots of different horses. Not everybody is able to afford Amanda's whiz-bang horse. Okay, so one of the lovely things about training horses is the journey you have with that animal. And that animal might be a Clyde cross. It might, in Australia, it might be a stock horse. Who cares? It might be a pony, albeit that you aren't going to be riding at FEI levels on a pony. I don't know about your rules, but we are only just opening up the whole pony element. Nevertheless, we have ponies active in the lower levels. And so one minute you've got a horse riding into the arena, the next minute you've got a pony. You judge them the same, though their gaits and their size are clearly sometimes very different. So it's lovely to see. And just remember that don't worry about the Amandas of the world. They're on their own journey. You go on your journey.
Yeah, it's so true. So what I want to do with you guys today is we wanted Fiona to come in and kind of talk a little bit about how to ride a test and how to set yourself up the best way possible for the level that you're in. So what we thought we'd do is we'd go through each level. So starting in introductory and then going all the way up to, third and fourth. I know for Pam, she's schooling third and fourth level. So getting those higher levels is important as well for us. And just going through like, what are things that the judges see? What are things that we could be working on? And what are the areas that maybe we should all think about when it comes into that competition? So Fiona, if you can just kind of start off and then hopefully we'll have enough time at the end that you can ask questions
Sure.
as well. The only other thing I was going to say is Linda C. I can see that you're on, but if you can open up your video, that would be super because I made poor Penny do it and Bianca because it's always fun to see your faces. But yes, Fiona, if you want to take us away and
Sure.
talk a little bit.
Okay, so I just want to touch base here. I understand, Pam, your third and fourth level. So there are things I'm going to say here which are fairly self-evident to you, but maybe the other people who are attending today might like to consider these other elements with regard to writing your dressage test, because they are actually an integral part of your preparation for writing the best possible dressage test that you can. The first thing I'd like to just start with very briefly is in going to a competition, you need to actually know two things. First of all, how's your horse going to react in this competition environment? That means the warm-up as well as the competition arena. So to some extent, you need to be mindful of your horse's reactions in different environments and have a few strategies in your toolbox to how you're going to deal with the horse that's horse shy, for example, the horse that jumps over shadows in the indoor arena, for goodness sakes. Just sort of get your head around that before you embark on the journey. It will also give you more confidence to manage yourself and your horse when there are a lot of other people out there working their horses diligently and completely in their own little zone. Okay, the next one, and probably it's a no-brainer, but it states the obvious: know your test. Okay, there's no point starting at home and just reading it the night before, and there's no point spending hours upon hours drilling your horse in writing only that test, because two things are going to happen. One, if you only read the test the night before, you haven't actually thought about how to construct, from a riding point of view, the best way to ride your horse through that test for each movement in that test. The second thing is, if you've been drilling your horse ad nauseum at home in only riding that test, there's every chance he's going to start to preempt every movement. And so instead of you riding the horse is actually riding you. So when I say know your test, understand how you learn. If you're somebody who has to literally, and hey, we've all seen it, go to a dressage competition and you see the riders, they're standing there with one hand on the reins and they're drawing these amazing circles in the air and their mind is off somewhere else. That's the way they are visually going through the test before they actually enter the dressage arena to compete. But before you even get to that point, maybe you need to draw the series of movements on a piece of paper and on an imaginary arena on a piece of paper. Maybe you have to set out your lounge room with silly little cones and you have to walk it so that you get a sense of feel to do it. Or maybe you simply have to have somebody there at the side of the arena when you're training actually telling you what the movements are and how they're coming up. And through that familiarity of hearing the comments made by your caller, you understand how to put your dressage test together in terms of one movement leading to the next movement. So that's the other one you need to know about. One little one here that is just a bit of an obvious one, but it's happened to me a few times. You're all prepped, you've done your warm-up, you're ready to go into the dressage arena, and you trot over, and maybe your warm-up has been a little bit challenging for whatever reason, and you've presented to the judge, you're trotting down the long side, and blow me down, you have a brain fade. And you think, I have no idea after this halt where I am going other than left or right. Okay, panic not. The name of the game is here, that you have 45 seconds before you have to get into that arena after the judge has rung the bell. Okay, use that time outside of the arena, pick a pace that's comfortable for you and the horse, circle at A, do a lap around the arena, whatever. There's the first 45 seconds. You know that the first movement is a centre line and a halt. It is with absolutely every test. There's another 7 or 8 seconds. So now you've almost got a minute to recompose yourself and work out, after this halted X, am I going left or right? And funnily enough, if you have learnt your test and you've gone through the strategies that I've just said, chances are, if you can remember, yes, I've got to go left, everything else starts to flow after that. If it doesn't, well, I'm really sorry, but there's a strategy to help you along the way in regards to knowing your test. So let's now start breaking down the actual tests themselves. As I said to you just a second ago, absolutely every test in dressage starts with a centre line and a halt. So you know that each test is going to be judged as the first movement, centre line and halt. Now, as a dressage judge, I now have to work out, according to your level, how am I going to judge that centre line and halt? Clearly, the pace is going to change. Most of the time it comes in trot, but as you go up the levels, for example, to Prix St George, you will enter in a collected canter. But essentially, it's a straight centre line into a balanced halt. Even at introductory, we're looking to see that the rider keeps the horse forward and straight on the centre line, that they prepare to bring the horse into the halt, and then the halt is maintained in a position of immobility for a minimum of 3 seconds. Okay? If we are talking about second and third levels, where we're coming in either a working pace trot or into a collected trot, it's the same deal. It has to be straight, it has to be prepared, and the halt itself has to be balanced. Okay? It has to be at the marker. There's your very first mark. Okay? It's worth 10 marks. And it will be your last mark, 10 marks. And if you are riding in levels 2, 3, 4 and FEI, chances are you're also going to have another halt, possibly with a rein back associated with it during the course of the test. That's 30 marks in one test attributed to a halt or a halt combination. So it tells you a little bit about how much we as judges see this movement as one, it tells us what are you doing with regard to your training of your horse. 2, how submissive is your horse to the aids? Okay, so I bring this one up right now that it does not matter which level you're at, ride a good centre line, give me a good halt, and even if it feels crap, smile, because it's the first impression you're going to give me as a judge. I want to watch your test, but if you look like you're fit to be tied because the horse didn't give you a square halt, I'm probably going to be thinking this is not going to be a happy test. Okay, so let's take it from there. Some tests, the intro tests, training 1, and some of the level 2 tests will also include the depart out of the halt and the turn on left or right at sea. As you go up the levels, 3, 4, FEI, we'll actually break it down, and after the depart, you will find that the next part of the next movement is the turn, and then your first corner. Again, every test is going to have a turn, left or right, and every test is going to have the first corner. All right. Now, it doesn't matter whether that first turn and first corner is setting you up simply to trot down the long side or walk down the long side, as the case is in intro, or whether in level 2 is to set you up for a shoulder in, or whether it is in a level 3, 4, or even in a Grand Prix, or even a Prix St. George, to go across the diagonal in a medium trot. It does not matter. This is the next window of opportunity that I, as a judge, have to see how responsive is your horse to your aids, how well are you able to utilize the corner to prepare for this next movement. Now, let me break it down just a little bit more. In the intro tests, we've come in a trot pace, and then we've transitioned into a walk, and we've walked or trotted around the first turn at sea, and then we've gone into the corner. Now, as you will have a look in the directives, it clearly tells me how well did you use that corner. It's not just the pace I'm looking at. It clearly says in the intro test, how well did you use the corner? So if you're just sort of shimmying around the corner as if you're on 2 wheels, instead of really getting your horse nicely balanced in a good rhythmic trot, then this is going to be something I'm going to take into consideration in that second movement. If I jump ahead and go into, for example, the second level and talk about a shoulder in, you've actually come out of that turn at sea in a collected trot. Why? Because that's where you're going to have the level of engagement needed to keep the lightness of the forehand to enable you to go into the corner, balance your horse, and bring the shoulder to the inside track, which is essentially what is the construction of a shoulder in. So if you come around that corner, you haven't half halted and got your horse sitting underneath you more from the hind legs, and you've failed to keep him off the forehand, you may well bring his shoulder in, but the whole of the shoulder in will look as if it is flat and just dribbling along the ground. Now, I will not penalize you as a judge for failing to do a shoulder in. You've shown the position. But if your aim is to actually develop the quality of the movement, then I will be looking to see you've used that corner so that the horse really does have the lightness of the forehand. And that's where your bigger marks are going to be. So think about that first turn and that first corner. The last one I mentioned was the medium trot. It's the same principle as what I've said about the shoulder in. If you use your corners effectively, there is your engagement, there is your straightening. that will set you up for that thrust, lift and uphill movement, which enables the ground cover for the medium, or for that matter, for the extended trot. Okay, so there's the first two movements that every dressage test will have. Obviously, the outcome is different according to the level. Obviously, the way I spread my marks is going to change according to what I am seeing at the time. But there's for two movements right from get-go. You've all got to do them, so do them well, because now I'm yet again thinking more positively as a judge about, hey, listen, I like the way this rider is setting things up and the horse is responsive. I want to watch this test. Okay, so let me just sort of drill down now a little bit more on the specifics of the intro/training level, and then I'll sort of bleed the level 2 and 3 together, and then the level 4 will be a 4/ bit of pre-St. George stuff there. And you'll see that for each level, there is an ever-increasing complexity to the movements that we ask. But essentially, each movement has to address the fundamentals of that wonderful thing called the training scale. If I cannot identify the rhythm of the pace, which is the very first element of the training scale, then you will automatically be receiving a lower mark. Okay, so the walk has to have the clear 4 beats. Your trot is there in the 2, and the canter is there in the 3. Okay, so they have to be clear. The next part I have to see is that you have established a degree of straightness and a connection into the horse's, from the rider's hand into the horse's bit. Okay, now obviously at introductory level and training level, I am not going to talk and worry so much about whether the horse is on the bit. What I want to see is that there is a steadiness in the head carriage. And that's twofold: from 1, the steadiness of the rider's hand, and 2, the willingness of the horse to accept a bit in its mouth. All right, so if you take the intro and the training, the next step, if I'm seeing a trot pace, I want to see it with some energy and purpose. I want to see you going forwards with a nice steady posting trot with a steady head carriage. Now, somewhere in there, you're going to do a circle, whether it's at E or B or at the end of the arena at A, and you'll be doing it in trot. And it's a 20-metre circle. And I expect that you should be able to take your horse off the straight line and the safety of the long side of the arena, or the short side of the arena for that matter, and bring it on a line of a 20-metre circle. Now, it's important that you're able to understand that when I'm looking for that 20-metre circle, even at this level, I don't want to see a 15-metre circle, and I don't want to see a 30-metre circle. I don't want to see an egg. I don't want to see something which is squished on one side and happens to drift out to I don't know where on the other side. I want to see that there is an attempt by you to try and ride as accurately as you can from your markers in that 20-metre circle. Okay, the higher marks are obviously going to go towards people who can show the energetic trot, the steady head carriage, and the degree of accuracy in riding that particular movement. If I then take the next phase along in the intro and training, there's going to be a transition to walk. Transitions, the reason why we focus on them is because it tells us as judges a lot about your ability to use effective aids to change the pace and, in later stages, the actual tempo of the horse. Okay, so in this instance, in the intro and training, you're going to go from a trot to a walk. Now, the horse is naturally going to want to go into a walk. Why? Because it's an easy pace. But if you haven't planned it, if you simply let the horse dawdle into a walk and then continue dawdling, a number of things are going to happen. First of all, the horse is going to go, I can just wander anywhere. And they will weave around and forgetting any ideas of straight lines. And they'll have a bit of a look outside at the other horses, or, oh, look, I can see the photographer down there. Oh, look, I might have a bit of a spook at this flower that I think is on the side of the arena. So, good reason, keep the walk forward. Plan it. Sit into your saddle. Use your half halts. Take the pace down from the trot to the walk and then walk it forwards. Like every test, there will be 2 walks that must be seen by the judge. One will be that, for purposes of ease of understanding, that working pace walk that we've just talked about, which subsequently we will call the medium walk. There will also be a free walk, or as we go higher, the extended walk. Now, the fundamental difference here, and I need to see it even right back in intro and training level, is that you are able to show a clear difference in the horse's stride and frame between that working pace where he's on the job and he's focused and he's active and he's moving forwards, to then take it forwards into a free walk. A free walk does not mean a free walk in the park. It means I want this horse to march with purpose, but show the relaxation and the length over the top line as he stretches forwards and marches towards his next marker. And then when you're approaching that next marker, that you regain that connection to the contact and shorten up the frame back into that medium/working pace walk again. Even at intro and training level, this is a key mark. Why? Have a look across. Double coefficients. That means that the free walk in almost every test is worth 20 marks. Again, like the halt, and I've said to you, you could have between 20 and 30 marks in the test just on the halt. The walk has a coefficient of 20 marks. It tells you a lot about what we're looking for here. Okay? So, one of the other things that I just want to finish off with the intro and training is that I've mentioned the accuracy in the circle work, and you will have a number of other movements which involve walking and trotting again and circling and transitions. And then at long last, you'll be thinking to yourself, oh, it's almost over, yes! And you will shoot down the center line and go, oh. The test is not over until you do the final salute. Don't throw away the mark. Plan your turn onto that center line. It's a lovely arch of a half circle, and keep the activity in, whether it's the walk or the trot pace, and prepare for your halt. And for goodness sakes, don't just smile, just remember to salute as well. That is the final confirmation that you have now concluded your test. And although you may either be in the depths of despair thinking that was terrible, or absolutely ecstatic, please do not do a cowboy canter out of the arena after completion of the test. Just turn your horse onto the long side of the arena and quietly walk out of the arena. A few little pointers for those who are not experienced at riding and are doing introductory and training level. Much as you would like to say, good boy, and during the course of the test, please don't. Okay? Because if I hear it, I have to penalize you. Unfortunately, at this point in time, verbal cues are still considered penalties. All right? So leave all of your vigorous patting and copious rewards and lovely comments for your horse till the conclusion of the test. And then I am more than happy for you to pat and talk till your heart's content. Okay? So let me now move on to what is the second and third level. Okay, so clearly we're now starting to see the development of not just a steadiness in the head carriage. I want to see that this horse is starting to work on the bit. Now, it will start with, in the early stages of level 2, that your consistency may not be always there, but that generally speaking, the horse is willing to accept that you are asking for that connection to be working on the bit. At third level, you definitely need to be showing that level of consistency. Your horse needs to be showing, obviously, again, the rhythm of the pace. But now, in both of these levels, we've introduced the variation within the pace. So not only are we showing a working trot, for example, we are starting to show a trot with some lengthening of the stride, all the way through to a designated medium trot. In the canter, again, we will start with the working canter, but we will also need to be showing a canter with some lengthening stride all the way through to a medium canter. So elasticity and responsiveness to the rider's aids are absolutely key here. Just as I started this conversation by saying your first corner is your preparation for example, your medium trot or your shoulder in, it's also your go-to place, because that's where just before there, be it at K, F, H, or M, there's a very good chance you're going to be doing some transitions, okay? And I want to stress this, that this is where I see people throw away marks time and time again in second level and third level, is they think that it's an enormous relief that they've been able to show a medium trot or a medium canter, but they've either made the transition into that medium pace progressive at the start, or they've got to the other end and they've let the horse fade from the medium canter or the medium trot and use the corner to just dribble back into the working pace. If you have a look at the tests, you'll see 9 times out of 10 that you are going to get 20 marks attributed to that movement. 1 in the execution of the medium pace, and 2 in the transition out into and out of that medium pace. So make it clear. If I have to sit there, and I've got glasses on, but if I've really got to sit there with my glasses on, peering through a windscreen or through the judge's box going, did it happen? Did it happen? I'm telling you now, the marks cannot be big. The clarity and the definition of these transitions in level 2 and level 3 really must be evident to me, the judge, okay? The other thing that starts to get introduced in level 2 and level 3 is the development of lateral work. So no longer are you simply just riding from point A to point B on a straight line. Now you're actually starting to ride lateral movements. So we start with leg yields, okay, whether it's from the long side in or from the centre line out. And it's important that you understand that there is a thing that we are looking for. It's the bend and the flexion. And a lot of riders don't quite get that they are quite distinct things. And interestingly enough, I had a rider just yesterday ride a shoulder in volte travers, and I'm writing on the test, too much flexion, too much flexion. I got to the end of the test, she was the last rider, and I got out of the car and I said to her, look, I just want to give you some quick feedback here. Your bend is fine, your angle is good, but why are you yanking this horse's neck around? And she said, because the previous test, the judge had said to me, I need more bend. And I said, yes, the bend is through the rib cage. The flexion is through the neck and the pole, okay? So understand as a rider, what exactly is the correct way to ride a lateral movement, whether it's the leg yield, whether it's the shoulder in, the travers, whether it's the half pass. Understand the fundamentals of what it is to create that movement. Because I, as a judge, am looking to see, firstly, that you are able to set the horse up, prepare the horse to perform that movement. 2, that the horse is responsive to your aids and is able to sustain that movement. 3, the accuracy, because now it's not okay to get within a stride or 2 of the mark in order to start the execution of the movement. At level 2 and then progressing to level 3, I want to see accuracy. I want to see that when the movement for shoulder in says that you have to start, and let's just say it starts at H, that you've ridden a deep enough corner to start that shoulder in at H. Okay? If you are doing a leg yield and the leg yield is coming from the long side in to the center line, all right, that you have actually started, you, the rider, are at the marker on the long side when you commence that leg yield, and that you, the rider, finish that mark on the designated marker. Does that make sense? I hope that's sort of fairly clear. So accuracy is certainly coming into play. Let me just then say that if we follow through with the third level, then we're going towards fourth level. One of the other things is the perfection in the transitions as they now come into changes in pace. For example, in more complex ways, such as the simple change. Again, I saw all sorts of manner of executions of simple changes when I was judging on Saturday. I would see the canter, canter, abrupt stop. And I'm thinking, oh, Lordy, what's going on here? And then all of a sudden, the horse launches forward into the new canter lead. That is not a simple change. And there is certainly no fluency and harmony or preparation being done by the rider to assist the horse to perform an effective and well-balanced simple change. The simple change is where you have a canter lead, say, for example, it's on the left canter, and you are asked to perform a simple change between point A and point B. In this case, say it's between P and F, all right, on the long side, after having done a counter canter. And you are to come from that nicely balanced, collected canter into a walk. So you're bypassing trot. You're going from canter straight into walk, and then you're showing me 3 to 5 steps of walk before you pick up the new right canter lead forwards. Okay, so I need to see clear walk without tension. I need to see balance in the canter. No trot. No trot. Trotting in a simple change is low marks. So prepare. Balance your horse, execute the movement. If your horse is running away from you in the canter and you don't think it's balanced enough to perform that simple change at the designated interval of markers, take the time. You are going to lose marks because of loss of accuracy. But if you attempt accuracy but lose harmony and balance, you'll lose even more marks. This is all about starting to think more about ringcraft, smart riding. And as a judge, I'm looking to see that you are a smart rider. Okay? Let's just move on to level 4, and it's sort of hinting towards the Prix St. George as well. I just finished by talking then about the whole idea of doing a simple change. So where are we heading? Well, obviously we're heading towards the flying change. And in the medium advanced, what we call the medium advanced and you call the level 4, we are introducing in the first instance the singular flying change.
So that's our, sorry, I just want to interrupt you. So our third level has the single, and then our fourth level has the 3 on the diagonal. Yeah.
But okay, then in that case, sorry, readjustments. Sometimes, although Australia has adopted all of the USDF dressage tests, we call them differently. And in actual fact, I realized the other day, some of the movements that are incorporated in your tests are attributed to one movement, whereas in our tests, they can be split between 2 movements. So it's a bit different. Same, but different. Is that how they say it? Okay, so let's talk then about what the whole idea of the simple change is and the development of the singular flying change before we go into tempi changes. Okay, so the singular flying change, just like your transitions that have to occur and the balance and the quality of the canter that you need in the simple change, has to be there in the flying change. Okay. Now, obviously, there are going to be horses that are going to be doing tests at level 3, the third level, who are very happy to change from right to left, but not so happy to change from left to right. Okay, so that's the one-sidedness that every horse has, and it's the rider's job to, over time through training, develop the straightness, suppleness and the responsiveness equally on both reins. But it's a common thing that we will see, that a horse will more readily change to one lead over the change to the other lead. In the start point in the third level with the simple change is that we're trying to keep it a logical progression from the simple change into the flying change. Okay, but let me say again, just like in every other level, I need the clarity of the rhythm. I need the quality of the pace. For those who've started playing around with flying changes, you understand the horse not only has to be able to canter, you have to have what we would call the flying change canter. That is the actively engaged canter that comes from behind forwards into the uphill frame, where the horse has the balance then to be able to transfer its weight from one side of its body to the other side of its body in the process of a flying change. The horse has to be enough in responsiveness to the rider's aids, and the rider has to be effective enough in the use of those aids to make that change at the point or the interval in which it's supposed to occur in the movement. All right, so typically the flying change in the first instance would happen at the end of a long diagonal as it's coming onto the long side, or it might be as you are crossing a centre line. So there's enough open space. As a rider, you need to make certain that the quality of the canter is as good before, during and after that change. That is what I am going to be looking at. Even though the whole movement might say, come across the diagonal from F to H and flying change at X, and you think there's a whole diagonal there. The point is, my main focus for that movement will be the flying change and your accuracy around X to execute it. So the higher marks are going to go to the person who is able to execute the movement accurately and well. It's a no-brainer, isn't it? Let's take it just the next step along and look at the sequence changes, which will be your level 4 and above, or 4th level and above. So in Australia, and I haven't read all of your 4th level tests, what we did was, instead of saying at the beginning of the tempi changes, say it was going to happen on the across the long diagonal between MXK or HXF or whatever, it doesn't matter. We said early days, you had to do, say, 3 changes every 4th stride or 4 changes every 3rd stride. What our tests have now done, for example, in the 3 changes across the diagonal, is say that the first change happens approximately around the quarter line, the second change approximately around the centre line, and the third change the other quarter line. That way, what we have done with our test is to say, firstly, in the flying changes where we're doing multiple changes, we want to see that your horse is balanced. Instead of setting you into a you must do it at these designated intervals, 3 changes every 4th stride, we'd far prefer to see that the canter itself was balanced and the horse was well prepared for the change. Now, if that's not the case with your tests, then you have the issue here. That
so ours is the same. The first one has quarter line, center line, quarter line, and then the second test has, you have to do every 4th stride across the diagonal once. Then the third one has your 5s and 4s, I believe. Yeah.
Perfect. So I think it's really important to tease that out and understand that the reason why that was introduced was because it became evident that people became fixated on, I must perform this change at this designated interval, and they forgot to keep riding the canter. So you would see all manner of contortions in these changes where horses would fling quarters one way and then the other way. They would literally bunny hop through the changes. So the whole quality and the whole purpose behind the exercise was lost. So if you are starting out in these early levels, in the early part of the tests at this level, be mindful that you have that leniency in the first instance. Use it, because it is one of those movements, because it usually happens midway through the test. If you really do either override it, overthink it, or overstress your horse, there is a chance that the legacy of that will follow on to the residual of the test, and you will see ongoing tension and misunderstanding of aids. So keep it simple, stupid is a great principle to stick to, particularly when you are early stages in a movement that you and your horse are not yet fully established, but you have chosen to ride that test. Okay. Sorry, excuse me. Let me then just move on to some more concrete fourth level stuff, where we start seeing working pirouettes all the way through to the true canter pirouettes. As the people who have ridden at this level will know, it is now, we count the strides, just like we do in half passes, be it in trot or in canter, or if you're doing it either side, in, say, for example, all the way into the FEI levels, where you're actually doing a series of zigzags across the centre line. We count the strides, and it's important that you, the rider, understands that if I'm saying you can ride a working canter pirouette, then you have got 7 or 8 and a rather large circle to ride your working pirouette. But if you are going to ride a true canter pirouette, you know that it has to be fairly well centered, and you need to take 6 or 7 canter strides only, no more. Okay? If you are going to do your sequence changes, then I am going to be watching that you have got the correct sequence in your tempi changes. And I am also going to be watching to see that you have known your horse so well that you have positioned the series of sequence changes equally distanced out from the start as it is to the end, and that the middle flying change is over the centre line. That's the degree of accuracy that you have been on a journey on since you started at intro, and now as a judge, judging at the 4th level and beyond, I am going to see, and I'm going to need to see, in greater degrees of refinement. Okay? Some of the things, let's just move into the lateral movements again, and we're talking more now about the half passes. Rhythm. It happens time and time again that people start their half pass and they go for broke, and then the horse is unable to sustain the forward sideways movements, and then they start to come back. And one of two things happens. Either the legs start to go for clappers with the spurs on to keep the horse going, or the horse starts to suck back behind the vertical and it loses that lovely quality of cadence. If your horse does not have the physical strength and stamina to sustain that bold half pass, don't go for bold yet. Go for harmony and balance. It will win out every time. The bold stuff happens when you, the rider, have the confidence and the horse has the stamina and ability to do it. And that might be further down the track. So always think in terms of execution of the more complex movements, that the quality is not always in the wow factor of the pace showing degrees of flamboyance. No, the quality is in the consistency and the harmony with which you have executed that movement. Okay? Again, I highlight the fact that the gears in your horse are now so much more refined, and I, as a judge, expect to see that. So we started at intro and saying you simply had to show me a working pace. And then I said to you in levels 2 and 3 that I needed to see medium paces back into working paces. Well, obviously in 4 and beyond, we're looking at collected paces. We're working on, if I dare say it, the introduction into the Piaffe trot as well, which is a very different trot again from a collected trot. We're looking at extended paces, medium paces, and working paces. And the elasticity of the horse to be able to move between those paces, whether it is in the walk, the trot, or the canter, or in the refined movements of the Piaffe and Passage, then obviously I want to see that there is harmony and that there is a degree of manipulation that the rider can do with the horse to execute those transitions fluidly, harmoniously, and with good quality energy. There's that word again. I started using it when I started talking about the intro. Keep the energy in the pace. See, it never goes away. You've always got to have it there. All right? So, what else can I talk to you about with the 4th levels? Obviously, I don't want to talk about Piaffe and Passage. I just want to reiterate the fact that some of the fundamentals of the training scale are still going to be there, and they're still an integral part. It's just the complexity of the movements have obviously increased. The finesse with which you are expected to execute those movements, the degree of accuracy, the preparation, the harmony are all part of what I am looking for each and every movement that you execute in that test. And during the body of the test, I'm going to address through my marking and my comments each of those movements as I see it. Now, at the end of the day, I also have this great little thing called the collectives. And they don't sit outside of the dressage test because the collectives are the overall reflection of what I have seen in the dressage test. In the USDF test, you have got huge number of collectives. It's amazing. And it's a terrific tool because I think it really teases out so well all of the elements that I have been looking for in the body of your test and haven't been able to convince my scribe to quickly write down information about. But now here in the collectives, I, the judge, can go to town and write a great description of what I think. So at intro training level, you've got gaits, impulsion, submission, rider position, rider aids, in other words, the correct bend and the preparation for your transitions, geometry and accuracy. You have got 6 collectives. Amazing, amazing. So use those as a way of really getting to the nuts and bolts of understanding what it was that the judge saw was so positive in your test, and some of the areas that the judge thinks that you need to do a little bit more work on, okay? If you move into training, the only collective that has been dropped out is the geometry and accuracy component. All the others are still there, okay? And the coefficients that are attributed to those collective movements, just like that halt I was telling you about, just like the walk I was telling you about, tells you a lot about where our emphasis is. And in most instances, the double coefficient is against submission. Submission tells you a lot about the harmony between the horse and rider, between the effective use of the aids and the horse's ability to respond appropriately to those aids. Okay? As you move up, 2nd level, it's the same as training, 3rd's the same, but when you get into the FEIs, and I haven't double checked your level, your 4th levels, essentially 4th levels for us include the gaits, the impulsion, the submission, the rider's seat and position. Okay, when you get into the FEI stuff, however, in other words, you go into the inters and the Grand Prix and stuff, there is one mark. One mark. And that is for the overall impression of the rider. So You know, obviously by that stage, we're expecting that we don't have to tell you about whether or not there was sufficient impulsion in your paces. We don't need to tell you about the effectiveness of the use of your aids. What we're really drilling down to now is how harmonious is this combination as they present to us, because the rest of the movements throughout the test have already addressed the issues of submission, impulsion, gaits, etc. Now, let me just say this. Obviously, the horse that has the wow factor paces and can show me beautiful cadence strides, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, I'd love to ride this, their gaits are going to be a high score. But if the horse is not ridden with purpose, if it doesn't show that level of relaxation of the over the back, the engagement of the hindquarters in the transitions, all of which are embraced in that mark called the impulsion mark, and the mark goes down. So they might get an 8 for their paces, but they might only get a 7 for impulsion. Both of these two collectives are looking at the horse, the gait and the impulsion. Okay. The next two marks, the submission mark and the rider marks, they tend to sit together. All right. So if I see that a horse is submissive going forwards on a straight line, but every time you ask it to do something in the lateral work, such as a leg yield or a shoulder in or a half pass, it sort of goes, can't do it, won't do it, mark's going to come down. So all those flash paces that got 8, all of a sudden, if I'm sitting on a submission mark of 6, and submission is the double coefficient mark, can you see how the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away? All of a sudden, those collective marks aren't looking so flash, and that flashy horse that you spend, Amanda spent thousands upon thousands of dollars buying, is only as good as what you're creating, okay? And that's transferred into the submission mark. Then I come down into the rider's effective use of their seat and aids, because that is the thing that's going to support the submission mark. If you've sat there and you've been a passenger on your horse, guess what? You're not going to get a big mark. But if you've actively ridden, even if there were elements of the test where you've thought to yourself, somebody take me out of here, it couldn't get any worse. Even if either judge can see that out of this mishmash of stuff that the horse is throwing at you, you maintain your composure, you maintain your focus, and that you deliver effective aids to control the situation, I am still going to be giving you a solid mark in recognition that you rode the test to the best of your and the horse's ability on that day. Okay, it's not going to be fancy because there will be issues. Okay, it's not going to be a big mark, but it should never be a crucifixion mark. Okay, it should recognize that the rider has genuinely made that attempt to ride the horse to the best of its ability today. Okay, now let me just say there is one little column right at the bottom of the page, which we hope you never have to have anything written in, but it does happen. It's called the penalties and errors. Okay, so you make an error, of course. What is this? This is where instead of turning left on the centre line, you've turned right. And the judge has said, excuse me, freestyles are not on today. We have to follow the test. Okay, you're going to score some penalty marks. In the first instance, it will be 2, and then it goes up from there. But if you make 4 mistakes in the lower levels, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to tell you that your test riding is over for this arena today. You can go into the next arena and ride your next test, and hopefully you won't make any mistakes. Now, when you get into the higher levels, the Pre-St. George, beyond, into the FEIs, you get one chance to make a mistake, and then you go. So understanding that errors, of course, do happen. Pick your socks up, put your big girl pants on or big boy pants on, get on with it. Contain the error within that one movement. Okay, if your horse is misbehaving, supposing you're doing a shoulder in and you've then got a 10-meter circle followed by the travers, and maybe in the shoulder in he's going, I don't want to bend, I don't want to bend, and you think to yourself, you know what, I'm not going to have the fight. I know that he's not bending, and I'm going to get a lousy mark for this shoulder in, but I've got a trot circle coming up, and I can either go in rising trot or in sitting trot, and I can really send him forwards, and I can get him back on my terms. Do that. Control the problem within one movement. If I have, for example, I've come across and I'm supposed to do a canter circle and he breaks, all right? Or I've done the canter circle at the wrong marker, okay? Don't lose your cool. Don't worry. We all have brain fades. The judge will give you the direction as to where to recommence your movement. Do it and write it as best as you can, because you don't want to lose any more marks just because you've got angry at yourself for making a mistake and not writing at the correct marker, okay? Contain the error or the problem within one movement and keep writing your test. All right, I think that's about as much information.
That was really good. So everybody who is in this little Zoom chat will know that the deadline for the show is the 18th of March. So essentially, submit your test. If you have any questions, please reach out to me and ask me, for help, that kind of thing. And then Fiona's going to come back in I think it's on the 23rd for North America, which is the 24th for Australia. Same time, same place. And then hopefully, by that time, if you're all joining and you've all done a test, we'll spend a little bit more time, if you're comfortable with it, talking about your individual tests if you have questions, and really utilize that time to get the feedback from her on your exact test. In the meantime, we have about 10 more minutes here before we should log off. Does anybody have any specific questions?
Questions?
Yeah.
Yes, please ask me a question or 2 or 10. Deathly silence. I hate that.
Yeah, it always is like that. Yeah, for sure. I think Pam's going to ask a question. She looks keen. She's got her pink glasses on. Oh yeah, here we go.
I have access to one full size arena right now, a friend of mine. And although she has the letters up, I went there today to practice and film, and she has the letters up, but they're not totally visible in the filming.
Right. Okay. So
some are and some are not.
What level are you doing? What level are you doing?
Third.
Okay. As you know, accuracy is important. So let's just accept that in the whole online judging of tests, one has to be fairly flexible, because it isn't quite the same as the snapshot you get from looking at the judge's point of view when you're sitting in a car or a judge's box. You get a more global perspective of things when you're doing a dressage test in a competition environment. And the judge knows that. And the judge knows that in videoing, we are going to have to give some degree of leniency. So and I know that at that level, accuracy is important. I know my dressage markers, you know your dressage markers. So I know if you're supposed to be doing a movement at S, that if you're already at E, or what would it look like at E, then you're clearly not accurate. I don't have to see S to know that. But if I need to see a movement executed exactly at a marker, then if I can't see that marker, I can't evaluate the accuracy. But I can do another thing. I can see the fluency with which you executed the start of that movement. And that is what I will look at first and foremost in doing an online test. Okay, that you did that preparation. It will be evident to me. It might be simply a matter of you've performed a half halt and I can already see that there is a shortening of the stride behind. So I know that you've done the preparation for the execution of the movement, and then I will see the harmony with which that movement has actually been performed in the frame and the outlook of the horse. And that is what I will focus on. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, that's good, because okay.
Yeah.
I realized today it's I mean,
It's
know
tricky.
I can see the markers, but it's just not going to show on the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the same way, just bearing in mind that as a judge, we, as we go up the levels, and maybe people who are only in the training and in the introductory level, they may think there is only one judge. But the higher up you go, you're going to get 2, 3, 5, 7 judges, okay? So we are trained as judges from quite early on that we see a snapshot from the long side as well as the short side, and the perspective that you have is very different from when you are judging on the short side, which is essentially the judges at M, C, or H. Whereas if you're on the long side, say at E or at B, you are going to see elements of the test and the execution of movements and accuracy that the judge at C will not see. For example, I got so sick and tired the other day of saying, please try and halt at X, please try and halt at X. I was the judge on the long side at E, so I could look straight across and see whether the halt, the first and the last halt, was being executed at X. The number of riders who couldn't get within cooey of X. But as the C judge looking forwards, I can see when they're really grossly out, but essentially I'm looking more at the straightness. So different perspectives give different feedback. Sometimes there's going to be variance in the marks, but getting back to your whole idea of can I see things, we're already trained to see things from many different perspectives. A number of people who video their tests with the expectation that if you enter at A, that's where you should be videoing from. When in actual fact, you should be videoing from C because that's where the judge is sitting. So I have looked at tests online, all back the front, and we can still understand it. So it's okay. All right.
That's funny. Does anybody else have any questions for Fiona?
I do.
Yeah.
So when a movement, I'm just doing the training level test.
Yeah.
But when it calls for you to do like a change of gait between, say, like A and F or M and C or whatever, am I looking to do it right in the middle of those two markers?
Okay, so the trick here is that we give the leniency of executing a transition within the pace between two markers because we know that the key here is to be balanced, to be prepared and balanced. So if the movement is saying that you can execute the transition between, you gave the example A and F, my argument to me is that the greatest level of balance you will have will be immediately after you've gone through that corner, because that's where you can do your half halt and rebalance your horse. So if you're doing a transition from a canter to a trot, so you've come cantering along the long side, okay, and you're going to transition down to a trot between F and A, then I'd wait for me to be in the corner as I'm turning onto the short side. If I'm doing a transition from a trot to a canter, and I'm going from the trot pace between A and F canter, again, I won't try and go into the canter as I am looking towards the wall on the long side. I will go into the canter transition as my horse is coming through the turn on the corner. Why? Because the inside leg will be most likely to be most engaged under the center of the gravity of the horse. The horse will be looking down the long side, so it'll get that sense of there's somewhere to go to. And you will be able to balance your horse best to get the correct strike off into the left lead canter, as it would be if you were doing an AF. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And I guess because the test calls for we to make a canter transition between, like, after the first quarter of the circle. Yet I find it easy.
Yes. There's the one. Yes, that is part of your training test. Yes. You find it easier to do it literally as you come at the start?
Well, yeah, because I can come out of the corner at the trot, I can half halt him, I can straighten him up, and then I can ask for the canter. I find if I put him on the corner, he kind of.
Where does the movement start? Isn't it a circle?
Yeah.
What are you doing in a corner? Last time I checked, circles don't have corners.
Well, exactly. So yeah, so I find it easier to start it at A.
Okay, so that's fine. You can do that, but make certain you are one stride past A.
Okay.
Because otherwise, technically, you've executed the transition to a canter at a marker and not within the first quarter. Does that make sense?
Yep,
It's being
that
a bit pedantic, but bearing in mind, if you think of corners as being quarter circles, because that's all they are, they're the quarter arc of a circle, right? So when you're doing your canter transition, when you're doing a circle at A, you must be thinking that you are doing that 20-meter circle, which means when you come off at A, you have commenced a circle. You are not going into the corner,
Right.
all right? You've started your circle, and he's on the curve, just like he would be on the curve if you had been going through the corner. So you've ridden it forwards in the trot, so you've got the momentum and energy to give you the quality of the jump in order to go into the canter, and you've asked for that canter transition, keeping the line of the circle. Okay, that is how it won't matter whether you do it one stride after A or in the first quarter. If you've kept that line, you've effectively kept the benefit of a corner.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, no, thank you. That's
okay.
Good question. I know that a lot of people who watch the replay are going to have similar questions or things like that. So that's super good. What about Linda, Joni, Tracy, or Stacy? Do you guys have any questions?
So I have a question.
Go ahead.
Just doing training level with a new horse that likes to rush into things. Once in a while, I get the wrong canter lead. How bad do I get penalized if I do the canter?
Okay. All right. So the trick here, and it often happens, learn to love your corners. Your corners are the wonderful places where you can re-engage and balance your horse. So whilst I've just said to Bianca, ride your trot forwards so that you've got the best possibility to jump your horse forwards into the canter. In her instance, we were talking about that canter transition on the circle, all right? Now, if you were asked for a transition to canter between A and F, and then to go along the long side and do a 20-meter circle at B, and you didn't get the canter transition between A and F, I would rebalance the trot and wait till I got to the circle at B, which is effectively, as I said to Bianca, a series of corners on an arc, and ask for the canter transition there. If you tried and failed to get the correct canter lead and then let the horse fall into an unbalanced trot and then just slapped your legs together and said, look, I'll take any canter, but just make it the right one. Now as a judge, I'm thinking to myself, you haven't prepared, you haven't balanced, and you haven't actually used smart ring craft. And smart ring craft is where you would have used the corner effectively in the first instance, but if it failed, then you use the canter circle as the next point to pick up the correct lead. If we go back to Bianca's example, where you've got the circle 20 meters at A, and he doesn't get that canter lead in the first quarter, I would far prefer, as I think I said right back at the beginning, harmony. Forget the accuracy factor. You've already got a lower score for this movement because there's been an incorrect strike off. What I want to see is, what are you, the rider, going to do about it to rebalance the trot, to then ask for the canter transition again? If you just put your hands up in the air and say, incorrect lead, I'll just keep on doing counter for the entire circle, the marks are going to really plummet, because I will be saying to myself, I'm pretty certain she should know her correct diagonals by this stage of the game. Or if I see you literally pull the horse back into an unbalanced trot and just slap your legs together and hope for the best, again, I will be thinking, I think it could be more effective use of your aids and planning and preparation. So the mark will be low again. But if I see that maybe the horse was distracted at the very point that you were going to ask for that canter transition, and everything else was suggestive he was going to pick the right canter lead, but he saw that pink elephant outside the dressage arena, or that magical photographer who just wanted to come in with that photograph for that perfect, shoot, and, with that of the camera, and the horse goes like this, and of course, as a result, picks the wrong lead. But I see that you're smart enough to go, that's okay, cool. I've recognised it's an incorrect diagonal strike off. Come back into the balanced trot. Yep, okay, I feel the trot's good. Let's ask the question again. And you get the correct lead, I'm still going to keep you at a higher mark than somebody who has ridden the whole circle and counter-canter, or has been unbalanced and hope for some divine intervention that they were going to get the correct lead by just slapping their legs together. That's what rimcraft is all about with dressage riding. It's knowing how to salvage a situation that hasn't gone as well as you wanted it to go, but to regroup, keep your focus, keep the horse with you, go ahead and try again. Okay? And that will pay dividends, because there are 2 places I can reward you for that. 1, in the movement, and 2, right down in those magical collectives in the rider mark. Okay? So it pays to address the issue and show the judge that you know what you're doing and be effective in your riding. Okay?
Awesome. That's really good. Stacy, you had a question. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
There we go. So Kylie told me that I could do the sitting trot instead of the rising trot, because I'm new to riding and I just haven't really perfected the rising trot.
Mm-hmm.
How much will I be knocked off for that?
Okay. So what level are you riding? Are you riding intro?
Intro,
yes.
yeah.
Intro. Okay. I haven't got an intro test in front of me.
I have one right in front of me. So it does
So
say,
tell me right up
Yeah,
It does say
so-
working.
yeah, and so Stacey and I had this conversation because it says that the trot work is to be ridden in rising, and then I said again, it's a fun show. So in a normal circumstance, you'd have to be rising, but right now you're sitting. So yeah.
Stacey, if you submit to me a test that
Mm-hmm.
has you in sitting trot, I'm going to probably say something like, have a look at the top of the test, because if I just grab a test, I'm just trying to grab one out of my folder at the moment so that I can show you, because I suspect.
Yeah, it says A, enter working trot rising. Yeah.
So if I showed you, I don't know if it shows it, but there are several places where you, the rider, can see on a test. Right up the top there, and it'll be the same with the USDF test. It will tell you what are the things that we are really looking for in this level. And it will also say whether you can go rising or optional sitting trot. Now, because this is a fun, non-official online test evaluation, I'll bring it to your attention that at this level you should be rising trot, and that'll be the end of it. I'm not going to penalise you, because what is the point? It's a learning exercise. However, if you came down my centre line in an official competition, for every movement that you continue to go sitting trot after I have belled you and told you that you must be in rising trot, I will penalise you. Okay. And the problem with the penalties is they start off at 2 marks and they very quickly become 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, 8 months elimination. So just be mindful of that. But for the purposes of this exercise, be comfortable. If you feel more secure going in sitting trot, so be it. But I will still expect you to ride your horse forwards and not just sit there going, it's okay, we're not going anywhere fast, so therefore we can't fall off. Okay? Because I keep on coming back to that word energy. It becomes forward, it becomes impulsion as you go up. It's still the same thing.
Yeah.
All right.
I just figured it's better to, this will be my first test ever, and it's better to be out there and give you what I get now.
Yeah, do it.
Exactly.
It's this whole thing is all about your own personal journey. Okay.
Now, now Linda or Tracy, do you guys have any questions? If not, we're going to wrap up here. No, Linda shakes her head. Tracy shakes her head. Okay, so in the meantime, you guys, if you have any questions, please send me a PM on Facebook. You know, you can always reach me through that channel. Deadline is the 18th, and I don't know if you were all a part of the mindset talk we did a few days ago, but we are offering your friends a full month of the program for free. They also get their entry for free into the show. So if you have any questions, send me a message. And I hope you all have fun. That's the whole idea of these shows. And that's exactly what Stacy, and I'm happy she asked the question, because it is just fun. And I think if any of you have talked to me before, I'm all about go big or go home and try, because worst case scenario, it's not perfect, but dressage is never perfect, right? Like Charlotte doesn't have 100. So why not put yourself out there and really, really get an accurate representation? Like I know with Pam, we've been chatting back and forth for quite a while now. And I love seeing the progress that you guys all make. And I think for me, it's why not try, right? Like why just not get out there? So thank you, Fiona, so much for your time.
Oh, I enjoyed it. I hope you haven't all got sore ears from all my backpacking, but anyway.
No, it was perfect. And we'll definitely, like we said, we'll bring you back in. And obviously the next chat that we have might be a little bit less conventional, because we might have people asking more questions and that kind of thing. But yeah, if you have anything in the meantime, please just send me a message, and I hope to see all of your entries come in.
So
Thanks, Fiona. Bye.
Bye-bye.